the shuttle clicks again, soft, steady, like a heartbeat. Somewhere nearby, a woman counts in a low voice, keeping the rhythm, and the air carries the faint scent of sun-warmed silk and dye. What does a pattern remember when it is woven by hand? What histories, arguments, prayers, and promises are stitched into those tiny crosses of thread?
Listen closely. There's that counting again. The sound tells you where the work lives, under a veranda, near a river, in a market stall. The sound is ordinary and sacred at once.
Welcome to Ancient Echoes, where we dive deep into the heart of Cambodian culture and history. I'm your host, Samnang Bradley, and joining me is my co-host, Rachana Soul. In this episode, we ask a simple but powerful question. How does cloth keep memory? From Ikat threads tied before they see color to sampot folds worn at weddings, cloth carries stories of kinship, ceremony, and place.
As we explore, we'll center the women who weave these lives, mothers, apprentices, cooperative leaders. The layers matter: technique, motif, trade, and the everyday conversations woven into practice. We'll hear sensory vignettes, and we'll end with practical, ethical guidance for listeners who want to photograph, buy, or support respectfully.
Segment 1. Threads of Origin. The story begins where mulberry leaves meet careful hands. Silk, for many Khmer weaving centers, has long been a local fiber. Silkworms tended near home gardens, cocoons boiled and reeled, and then the long, patient work of warp setting and dyeing. Regional Ikat traditions bloom across provinces, different towns, different tie patterns, different color sensibilities. The Khmer Empire's capital networks moved cloth and motifs across rivers and roads, and those routes left marks in how patterns travel today.
Consider this perspective. When a family keeps an Ikat pattern for generations, they're also keeping a map of marriages, of exchanges, of seasons. The pattern's edges speak to trade ties. Its colors might speak to a local plant's availability or a regional taste for deep indigo versus lighter tans.
Segment 2. From Thread to Pattern. Imagine sitting beside a weaver. First comes the warp. Long threads stretched taut like the backbone of the cloth. Before dye touches those threads, some sections are bound tightly, resist-bound, so that when color comes, those bound places remain the original thread color. This is the logic of Ikat, pattern decided while the thread is still a promise, before the loom. Dyers work with local plant-based colors, roots and leaves, mud baths, and, where it's common, indigo vats that smell like rain and earth. I won't give a how-to. What I can do is describe the rhythm, measuring, tying, testing color, adjusting tension, then the slow return to the loom, where the pre-patterned warp meets weft, and the image finally flickers into being.
The evidence shows us that the tying patterns are often family knowledge. Knots, counts, tiny mnemonic choices that tell a weaver which motif will appear. Let me contextualize. Apprentices learn by watching, by listening to the counting, and by tying their first imperfect knots under a mother's patient guidance.
Segment 3. Motifs and Meaning. When we look at motifs, there are recurring stories. The river motif, for example, can point to a community's relationship with water, fishing, travel, the monsoon cycle. The naga, a serpent figure, can mark protective and cosmological meanings tied to local beliefs and ancient temples. Lotus motifs speak to purity, offering, and the everyday presence of ponds and pagodas. Geometric borders often work like signatures, small markers that can denote a village or a family line. But remember, one symbol in one village can mean something different in the next. That variation is part of the richness.
That's foundational to understanding why we must not rush to label a cloth just a pattern. From a cultural standpoint, motifs are voices. They may mark births, weddings, mourning. Cloth participates in life cycle events and becomes a public record of private memory.
Segment 4. Women, Apprenticeship, and Markets. In many villages, weaving is a family-centered craft. Mothers teach daughters, and grandmothers pass down color secrets. Cooperative models are growing. Women group together to access better markets, set fair prices, and share training without losing control of designs. I want to lift up a small story. In Battambang, a cooperative turned a roadside sales table into a steady income by pooling orders and agreeing on transparent pricing. That change didn't come from a tourist. It came from the makers deciding how to sell their work on their terms.
The tradition teaches us that cloth also circulates through ceremonial life. A sampot folded for a wedding may carry a mother's blessing. A funeral shroud carries public grief and private memory. When cloth moves from village to market, it carries those associations with it. So buying is never only a transaction, it's a relationship.
Segment 5. Economy and Sustainability. Silk supply has ups and downs. Local sericulture can be fragile, and imported silk threads sometimes enter the market. That affects pricing and artisans' livelihoods. Tourist demand brings both opportunity and pressure. Fast copying of designs, or customers pushing for lower prices because they don't see the labor behind the cloth. My practical advice? When possible, buy through vetted cooperatives, ask about the maker, and be prepared to pay fairly. Credit the maker by name if she asks. Support that respects makers helps sustain both material and memory.
The research tells us that sustainable change often starts with empowerment, access to markets that understand craft value, training in business skills chosen by the women themselves, and connections with curators or conservationists who acknowledge provenance. This is how heritage survives without being swallowed by commodification.
Segment 6. Ethics for listeners. If you want to photograph, ask first. Simple English phrases work. Excuse me, may I take a photo? And would you mind if I photograph you or your work? In Khmer, a short polite phrase you can use is atorupante, pronounced achtorupante. Please confirm pronunciation with a local speaker in show notes. We've linked vetted phrases there. If you're interested in buying, try asking, "Did you make this?" and "Who made this piece?" There's power in naming the maker and offering payment with clear credit. If a maker says no to a photograph or sale, accept that without pressing. Offer your thanks. Sometimes a small polite gift or buying something else at full price is the most respectful response.
Consider this perspective. Consent is part of stewardship. When you seek picture or a story, you are stepping into someone else's archive. Offer payment, ask about attribution, and if you share online, tag the maker and the place. If you can, direct support through cooperatives we mention in the show notes. This channels demand back to communities rather than creating pressure on a single family.
Before we close, 2 brief cautions. First, we have intentionally avoided step-by-step instructions for dye recipes or tying methods. These are cultural practices, and in many communities, sacred or proprietary. Describing them here risks appropriation. Second, when you encounter a motif that looks pretty, pause and ask, what does it mean here? Who decides its value? Those questions help guard against trivializing living traditions.
If you're a heritage traveler or a member of the diaspora, remember, listening matters as much as purchasing. Record the names of makers when they offer them, amplify their stories with consent, and consider long-term relationships, commissions, fair orders, or sharing skills the community requests rather than imposing outside ideas.
Conclusion. Today, we've traced threads from mulberry to market, from the tight knots of Ikat to the wide meaning of motifs. We've met the women who keep these traditions alive, and we've talked about how to be ethical visitors and buyers. If something here moved you, there are concrete next steps. Check the show notes for vetted cooperatives and some Nang's curated visual guides. Use the consent phrases we provide, and if you post, do so modestly and with attribution.
This is the heart of it. Cloth remembers when we remember to listen. That's where culture lives, between hands, stories, and careful exchange.
We'd love to see what you've encountered. If you share a modest photo or a short clip of a textile, one sentence about where it came from or who made it, please tag Ancient Echoes and Some Nang's YouTube channel. We'll curate respectful reels and amplify makers when they've given permission. Let's unlock the echoes of history together.
Sân ca mình lát lâu lộng lại mà từng em hát say ê không chỗ xa hơn ta sẽ lâu cho thi hỏi nhét lung cho cha lưng sẽ na không đi prai đông khai yam chia san say lý ngamเป็นไสไสบ้านเป็นปีขยำใครรงปันอ่อนกันสิลหอคันมอลันโซสเวงกรีนครามสันมันใสคิดจานกระโรง